we live by the cross. Crucified with Christ, count the world as lost. Ricky and Mike bring the word each week with a voice in the streets and the truth we speak. Galatians 2:20, that's our name. Not a brand, it's a banner for the Lamb who reigns. Reformed and Baptist, holding that line. 1689, we confess by design. Stay Baptist, stay bold. Truth and love, let the scriptures unfold. From creation to the end, we break it down. Real convos, Christ wears the crowns. They say, stay Baptist, stay bold. Truth and love, let the scriptures unfold. From creation to the end, we break it down. Real combos, Christ wears the crown. Say theology matters, his word remains unchanged, unshaken, forever the same. G220.
And welcome to another episode of G220 Radio. This is Ricky Gantz along with Mike Miller, and we have a guest with us here tonight, Eric Medea. And so we are looking forward to this conversation that we're going to have here tonight on G220 Radio. But before we get into that, before we introduce our guest who you can see on the screen with us, Mike, how's things been going with you over the last week or so?
Yeah, I mean, it's officially the holiday season, at least in the retail world.
Yeah, you got your tree up and everything yet, or is it
still
too early?
At work, we have it. We're already we're late. At work, we're late on our Christmas content. Normally, we start in September.
Yeah, you got to get that stuff out there. The reason I ask that is because obviously everybody keeps saying it gets further and further back. So you go into the store. We're going to talk about Halloween here tonight, Christians and Halloween. But you go into the store and like you have your Halloween decorations, and then before you know it, like all the Christmas stuff is there too. And like, I don't even think Thanksgiving even gets thought about, it gets lost in the middle. And so, what do you do?
I mean,
Thanksgiving is one of my favorite times too, because all that food
in the retail industry that I work in e-commerce, like my company makes its most amount of money in November, December, and January. Like, that's profitability. So there's just a lot of effort. And that plays out. That's why Black Friday keeps stretching out. It's now a month long. Black Friday itself is not as big of a deal. Amazon's trying to make Cyber Monday still a deal, like a thing. But even then, that's that. But all of this stuff, I mean, we've been talking about Christmas now for a couple months at work, and we're buying stuff and trying to get stuff ready so we can have photo shoots and products and stuff like that. So in defense of like Hobby Lobby, who already has Christmas stuff out, I think Hallmark has the ornaments out in August for you to buy for that year. So like, it's just, I guess I've been in retail long enough that Christmas is always early.
Yeah. Well, it's a holiday that I know people are excited to get to, so much so that you see it in the stores. And my wife is talking about putting up the tree because we don't get that long once, I said, how about after Thanksgiving? She's like, no, we don't have that long then to have it. And my oldest son in the house, not my oldest son, but the one living in the home, was like, it's too early. Like, you can't really enjoy it unless you do it later on and then the Christmas time and whatever. But anyways, tonight we're going to be talking about Halloween. We do have Eric Medea on the program with us tonight. Eric, you've been listening. Before we introduce about who you are, anything you want to talk about or add to the little bit of back and forth we just had about Christmas, Halloween, and all these holidays? And
I mean, Turkey Day. How do you forget? That's the day for fat guys like me. That's our holiday. Bring on the food. Bring on the mac and cheese. You know. So, and another thing about trees. If you're gonna do a Christmas tree, if you have a fake plastic one, put it up in November. But if you get a real tree and you put that thing up in November, it's just gonna be a firewood by the time this rolls around. So and we do a real tree here.
Yeah, I think if you have a fake tree, you can just keep it up all year round, really, and just decorate it according to the seasons. No, I don't know.
There you go.
But hey, because we're just having a little fun here, and speaking of Thanksgiving, which will come after Halloween, what is one food each of you cannot do without on Thanksgiving? For me, I'd say, there's meat, there's all kinds of stuff, but definitely stuffing for me.
Yeah, my wife makes probably the best macaroni and cheese on the planet. So much so that when my son got leave from the army, when my wife asked him, "What do you want me to make?" he, without hesitation, make me some mac and cheese. So we have to have that, or the natives will revolt in my house.
Man, I'm all about the pie, whipped cream, apple pie, pumpkin pie, whipped cream. Sold. I mean, I like ham, not as I like turkey less. Stuffing, mac and cheese, green beans. I mean, I eat it all. Not big on the cranberries, but I'm there for the pies.
Yeah. The reason I say stuffing for myself is because that's one food that we don't hardly ever eat throughout the year at all. Even though we have some of those boxes, I convinced my wife to make some the other night. And I was just like, yeah, this should be more. We should have this more often. But, it's one of them foods we don't have that often. So as I said, we're going to talk about Christians and Halloween tonight, having a little bit of fun here beforehand because holidays come up and Christians have lots of different reactions to a lot of different things. I mean, there are even probably some Christians, maybe more along the woke line, who would have a problem with Thanksgiving. There's Christians that claim that Christmas is a problem. And Halloween, this is a time of darkness. This is a time of evil, and it's the devil's day, so to speak, that many will say. And so what do we do as Christians? And we've done shows in the past about Halloween. We've done shows about trunk or treats and trick or treating, but I thought it would be fun because as Christians and being very evangelistic, we want to find ways to evangelize. And I think Halloween can be one of those times where we do that. And so we're going to kind of talk about that here on the program, but we are going to talk about necromancy a little bit here before we jump into that, because it is a time where there are some, I know there's witches around here where I live that love this time of year and speak about communing with the dead and just things along those natures that the Bible does speak and condemn. But as I said, we do have Eric Medea on the program. He's a brother that I've known for many, many years. I met him through Sports Fan Outreach International. As you many of you would know, many of our guests come from there because these are brothers that are faithful brothers that go and proclaim the gospel in their sphere, whether it's in open air preaching or in their communities, handing out tracts through their church, seeking to reach people for the gospel of Jesus Christ. And Eric is a brother that I met at Sports Fan Outreach International, I think the Kentucky Derby many, many years back.
Correct.
And he is an elder at Emmanuel Reformed Baptist Church in Clarksville, West Virginia.
No, you're going to get me killed. Clarksburg.
Clarksburg. I'm sorry.
Oh my goodness. Hurts.
My reading comprehensions are bad. I was going to make a joke about West Virginia, and
that's easy to do.
And here I am. So he's 12 years as a pastor, 8 years in open air ministry. He's a husband of one wife, father of 3 children, and grandfather of 5 grandchildren. And so, Eric, welcome to the program here on G220 Radio, brother. For being the first time on the program, go ahead and share a little bit more about yourself, how you came to know the Lord, how you came involved with pastoring and doing open air evangelism, or just evangelism in general out in street, in the public sphere, so to speak.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in the church. Of course, West Virginia is kind of like that southern part of the Bible Belt, where, if you do street ministry here, it's kind of difficult because everybody's saved. But the problem is they just grew up in church, right? They've never really truly had a born again experience. But nonetheless, I grew up in church, didn't really stay with it. I did the whole repeated prayer, raise your hand, and I thought I was kind of saved, but then I lived like the devil. So that shows you that. But anyway, went off to the Army, came back, got back home to West Virginia, met my girl. We lived together. We weren't born again. We weren't saved. And then I don't know. Well, you know, because this is what happens. The Lord just kind of shook the tree and said, "What are you doing?" And we found a church, and we got settled in the church. And it was interesting. I was brought up as a Free Will Baptist, and with that name, you kind of know what that means. And I ended up in a church where the pastor was. He taught at Marshall University. He was the professor of religion, but he was a Calvinist. And that's how I ended up as a Calvinist, because the church we happened to pick by accident had that pastor in it. It just went from there. I got plugged in. My wife and I my girlfriend and I instantly got married. We were like, we can't do this, right? So we got married, and the rest is history. I went on there to become a deacon there, and then I was on the elder board and the assistant to the pastor there for about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. And then I met a guy named Jason Staub, who you know, and by accident, actually, we were beating up on a wolf who was holding some type of a festival of lights thing. I don't know, but we met on Facebook because we were beating this wolf up, telling him that what he was doing was wrong. And I was like, hey, I kind of like you, man. You think like me. And that's how I met Jason. And that's how I got into open air ministry. And that's how I met you at the Kentucky Derby, I think 2016 or 17.
Yeah.
Is the year I met you there at the Kentucky Derby. So, currently I am one of the 5 elders at Emmanuel Reformed Baptist Church in Clarksburg, West Virginia. Small town of about 25,000 here in the hills. So,
yeah. Well, yeah. Thanks, brother, for coming on this program tonight to talk about this and, bringing your wisdom, your thoughts on this topic into the conversation, as well as Mike's, and just, it's an important conversation to have, like as the world celebrates this night filled with costumes, candy, and sometimes often darkness. How should we as believers respond to this? And I think that if those of you know me, being evangelistic, in the past I've handed out candy for Halloween with gospel tracts. And we're going to talk about some of that here tonight, because there are lots of ways in which churches do seek to try to use this time of year as a way to reach out. Some do it good, some do it poorly, but in all, what should I say? The overall goal, I think, is seeking to try to witness to people. And so we'll talk about some of that here tonight. But before we do that, I want to let the listeners know there is a poll over on the G220 Radio YouTube channel. If you are watching on G220 Ministries channel, if you're watching on Facebook, you can't participate in that poll. But if you go over to the G220 Radio YouTube channel, you can participate in the poll, and it says, do you hand out candy, maybe gospel tracts with that on Halloween night? And you have some options there. Right now, we are at 100%. No, I don't participate. It's evil. So for those listening, let us know where you're from as you commented on that poll. But getting into this, because it is very important, one of the things that I did want to talk about, because originally Mike and I were going to talk about talking to the dead, something along those lines. I put out to you, Mike. I don't even know if you remember. I put this out a long time ago. It's like, yeah, we're going to do something along this lines. So the one thing I did want to touch on is the idea of necromancy, communing with the dead, because this is something that people do bring up. I've heard it said about Halloween. This is the time where you come out and you dress up in these evil costumes or evil ways to kind of ward off the evil spirits that come out this night, and so forth. All kinds of traditions, all kinds of ideas that people have. But when it comes to communing with the dead, I think the Bible is pretty clear. This is not something we are to participate in. Necromancy, dealing with psychics, speaking to the dead. A lot of times I think when I consider this idea, like these psychics and these people that commune with the dead, there's many of them that are charlatans. They're just fake. They're like this old show that I caught a couple times on TV called The Mentalist. They knew how to pretend to know things about you because they picked up on cues, or they got a little bit of information from you and they were able to kind of use that to their advantage. But there are some who legitimately work with demonic forces in having some kind of spiritual insight because they are of their father, the devil, and have that behind them to kind of do and commune some of these things. And the one example that comes to mind for me is the Witch of Endor in scriptures, when Saul wants to speak to Samuel. And so he goes to this witch, and witches were outlawed. They were put out. They weren't supposed to be around. And Saul comes because he wants to speak to Samuel. And this witch, I'm sure, communed demonically in the past, but when she sees Samuel, she's kind of shocked. She's taken aback, So that's a story that comes to mind for me that shows clearly that we are not to be doing this. And there's other scriptures as well. But anything you guys want to add when we talk about or think about this idea of necromancy, communing with the dead, psychics and mystics, and all of these things that are, I think, even growing some. We just had an outreach this last week where we went out to Medina Square, and it was a witches walk. It was a witches event. It was a ladies' night out on the town, and there were like hundreds and hundreds of women just dressed like witches or dressed like something along that line in witchcraft, just out there trying to have a good time. And we had Christians out there trying to give them the gospel, and they said, "Can't you just let us have one night of fun?" And so, but go ahead, guys.
I mean, yeah, when you think about the Witch of Endor, the irony that Saul, who it explicitly says in Samuel, kicked them all out of the land, now seeks this necromancer to go and talk to Samuel the dead. And I think Samuel's response to him, let me pull it up so I can not butcher it, but his response about like, why are you like digging up the dead? Like, why are you going? There's this like an element in our understanding of life and in death that plays a part in how in why we and how this goes. So in 1 Samuel 28 verse 15, after he's shows up, Samuel says to Saul, "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up?" Then Saul gives him he's a great distress and worrying. And then Samuel told him in verse 16, "Why then ye ask me, since the Lord has turned from you and you have become your enemy?" Like Saul knew the answer already. And like Saul's trying to do, he's trying to fight back for what he's lost. But I think when we think about bringing up the dead, I think the New Testament gives us this more clearly. But to be absent with the body is to be present with the Lord. There is a physical separation between our bodies and our spirits temporarily until we're glorified. That happens. That this is more than that. And to kind of conjure up those souls is to have a wrong view of kind of souls. I mean, the Catholics kind of even have this view, but the souls just kind of linger around. Obviously, this is a naturalist isn't going to go this way. So we're really talking spirituality, those who have some sort of spirituality. But to think about what our souls are and what our body is, it really starts pushing against how God has made us as creatures and just even our relationship with him, especially us who are in the Lord.
Yeah, let me say, I think that, we also have to make some, we should draw some comparisons here. Necromancy, also in the scripture, you hear it as divination, sorcery, spiritualism. I mean, it's just, Deuteronomy 18, literally God says, if you go to a necromancer, it's an abomination to the Lord, right? I mean, it's just there. Galatians 5:20 has this long list of sins, and one of them is sorcery. So it's called a work of the flesh. And I think of Acts 19:19. You remember that, where you had a bunch of the pagans were into this mystical, spiritual, and they had all these books and they burnt them. You remember that scripture? And it was worth about 50,000 pieces of silver. That's how much the Greco-Roman culture was into witchcraft and divination. But the question I think we need to ask is why? Why necromancy? And why is it an abomination to God? You said it right, brother. The scripture is clear too that you're not communing with a person. When you're doing this type of stuff, you're communing with evil. You're communing with a demon. You're communing with an evil spirit. Because if you remember, even when Jesus tells the story of the rich man and Lazarus, he tells the rich man, your brothers cannot go back. And even if they could, they wouldn't believe someone that even came back from the dead. So we know that there's a gulf fix there. But why? Why do people do it? And that's really the question. I think you touched on it, brother. I think a lot of times men want answers to life's questions, right? And they'll go anywhere to get the answer. Should I take a job? Is my woman going to leave me? Whatever it is, right? And then secondly, I think we all kind of want to know what happens after a person dies. What happens after death? Now, the scripture tells us, we know as believers, but the average person, a non-believer, that's the big, scary question, isn't it? So, so if you can call up a spirit, you can maybe ask them. And I think that's what goes on with this type of practice.
Yeah. One of the things from my own personal experience is we've stopped at a couple psychics in our area to knock on their door and to share the gospel with them. And they didn't know we were coming. So.
Right. Yeah. Hey, a few years ago, we had a psychic. Her shop was right on the main drag downtown, and a vehicle lost its brakes and slammed right into the front of her shop and demolished it. And I was like, you didn't see that one coming? I mean, how did you not see that coming? That's a pretty big event,
Yeah. Yeah. But as you guys said, I think the one thing when you think about this is it is demonic. The Bible speaks against it. You brought up Deuteronomy. It speaks about it in Leviticus. It talks about it in Isaiah. Isaiah 8:19 says, explore the prophets, rebuke against consulting the dead instead of the living God, urging listeners to test everything against Scripture. And so there is a evil and darkness when it comes to sorcery, when it comes to witchcraft, when it comes to necromancy, when it comes to these things that the Bible speaks against. I don't believe, and you guys can speak to this if you want to add to this, I don't believe that witchcraft or sorcery or necromancy is any more prevalent on Halloween night than any other night of the year. Meaning, I don't think that there's this is that one time of year where they can commune with the dead in a greater way than any other time of year. Because the devil and demons, they would love for you to think that, so that people maybe worship them more on that night rather than the true living God. But I mean, I don't see it as a day that is more dark than any other day of the year. Now, maybe the ways people do practices could be dark and evil, but anything you guys want to speak to that as well?
I know. I was looking up a little bit of this. In Ireland, there's actually a festival here. It's on the 31st, where, according to what they believe, that is actually more the connection between the living and the dead is so close and separated that they can more easily commune with the dead on the 31st. And so if that's true, or they say it's true, so that gives some leadance to this understanding that the 31st is this day that we are able to communicate with the dead. And this kind of falls in line even when you think about Catholic tradition mostly, although some Protestants do celebrate when you have All Saints Day on the 1st and All
Hallows Eve.
Yeah, All Hallows Eves. And so you have this kind of preparation for and celebrating those who have passed on November 1st. I mean, that's why Martin Luther chooses the 31st to do the 95 Theses on the Vitamin Church door. So to think about, there is this seemingly connection between kind of the 31st. Some of it is even because it's halfway between the fall and winter equinox and the end of harvest season, especially in the northern hemisphere. And so that plays a part into some of the fable that comes around why the 31st is so important for this communication with the dead.
So the thing about it too, what are they doing when you want to communicate with the dead? You are literally trying to usurp and that's exactly what Isaiah says. You're usurping going straight to the Lord, right? Or straight to the scripture. You're going around that. You're trying to get an answer from whomever or whatever. Interestingly enough, I've heard this before. There is an old Celtic festival, Samhain, and that's where we get this idea of there being this thin veil. What the Celts would have it at the beginning of the year. And what happened, I think, probably around 800 AD, when they got Christianized, right? You're talking about the Celts. A lot of the stuff got, and the Catholic Church was kind of good at this. They would take the pagan stuff and just paint some Christianese on it, right? And voila. Well, instead of having your Celtic, Samhain festival, we're going to have, All Hallows Eve. We can still talk about the thin veil between the spirits, but we're going to Christianize it. And that's where a lot of people get upset with Halloween, right? Because they say, well, and of course, Americans got a hold of it, right? Because we had a lot of Irish and Scottish settlers that came here, and they brought some of those traditions with them. And of course, once we got a hold of it, the Americans were like, oh, we can make a buck off of this bad boy. But, right, that's about how we do all that. But yeah. I think it's, and then we carried it in the late 1800s. You guys ever heard of a planchette board? It's a board where, go ahead.
I've heard the title. I don't remember.
Yeah. So what you would do, and this was very prevalent in the late 1800s, mid to late 1800s, you take a board and a piece of paper and a pencil, and you would focus, and you would try to commune with the spirits around you, and then you would put the pencil down, and the spirit would write for you, right? Now, actually, I don't want to get into that, but that ties into some of the charismatic stuff. That's kind of how they got their start. But nonetheless, and then that, of course, morphed into Ouija boards, which are very popular. It's kind of a board game, right? It's a Ouija board's a planchette, just without a writing utensil. And it got big because we're trying to commune. We're trying to get answers from anyone else except the true living God. And that's where people get so upset, Christians, when they think you're participating in that somehow. But yeah, that's kind of my take on that part too.
Yeah, and leave it up to Americans and those in the West. We will, put anything we can to make a consumer buck off of it.
Yep.
But I would say to those who may be watching, to avoid those types of games, those types of practices. Don't participate in it. I don't think that a demon needs a board to influence or to demonically possess someone. But why participate in those things which God says don't do this? Don't.
Why put a sign up and say please do?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anything else you guys would want to add on that communing with the dead and sorcery, witchcraft, before we move into ways in which Christians can participate? Or we would say that. I don't know about those in the chat that are in the poll, because we're still at 100%. We've got more than one voter, and they're all like, it's evil. So let's, before we get into talking about ways in which we can use it to evangelize, anything else you guys would want to add to that?
No.
Okay. All right, let's jump into this here. So ways in which we want to think about evangelizing. So evangelism opportunities in a community kind of setting. So we've got two ideas that we're going to throw out. We'll start with trunk or treat, and then we'll talk about fall festivals. But trunk or treats, this is a way in which, like, some people don't want to go door to door and participate in trick or treating. Maybe some of the reasons I know, because you don't know who these people are that are handing out candy. And you tell your children don't take candy from a stranger, and then you go and you're knocking on strangers' doors and asking them for candy. Whereas trunk or treats, typically, not always, but typically are done within the confines of a local church, Now, whether that church is a biblical church or not, I mean, it's done within the confines of a local church. And so it's a little more structured and organized in the sense of, who's putting it on. So if something were to happen, you could go back and say, this is where I was when this candy that somebody put in there was not good for my child, or something that happened. You know kind of where to pinpoint those. So some people feel a little more comfortable with those. And many churches have used this as an opportunity to evangelize their community, to participate in this without participating in it, so to speak, as far as like going door to door. What are your guys' thoughts on trunk or treating? What do you think about this as a way in which churches can evangelize their communities?
Well, I can tell you, our church sits in the middle. First of all, there's two things. We have a Christian school, classical Christian education, attached to our church, and we sit in the middle. We sit in the middle of a block and grid style neighborhood, and we do trunk or treat. And we tell our people, which it goes without saying, but basically the eldership just said, look, don't dress as the other team. If you show up to our trunk or treat to have a trunk and you have depictions of death, occult symbols, demons, ghosts, goblins, we will ask you not to dress, not to park your trunk there. But other than that, look, your kid dressed as Spider-Man is not worshiping the devil. Okay, let's just be honest. He thinks he's Spider-Man, right? So I'm probably going to dress as Gandalf this year. But the point is, and I'd make a pretty good one. But the point is, we, at this time of year, we're going to have over 1,000 kids coming to us, right? Mm-hmm. And if they're coming to you, if they're going to do it, why not, right? And what we do is we have gospel tracts. I showed you guys earlier. I made these, right, specifically for our trunk or treat, and we give out gospel tracts and we share the gospel. Obviously, we give out candy, and we've even had live open air ministry going on during this. We would kind of filter kids. The way you set it up, you filter them towards an end goal where there's someone presenting the gospel live. So that's what we do. We take that as an opportunity to share the gospel.
Yeah, I think kind of as we ended the last point to think about it is Halloween now, while there are some who do celebrate the occultic aspect in necromancy, in America, primarily, it has been commercialized. For Christmas, that's bad, but I think for Halloween, it's helpful and useful. I think, and so using trunk or treats to now present a way that you can hand out gospel tracts to give gospel presentation, makes use of what not only the freedom we have in America, but the opportunity, as just said, that, they're coming to us. They're coming here. And now we have this operation, this opportunity. And I think even, thinking about if you're just at home being able to the same thing, people are coming to your door to get candy. And this is now an opportunity to share with your neighbors about being a Christian and having this kind of extra opportunity in that way. And so, we take the opportunities God has given to us and make him known, knowing that, out of the darkness came light. Mm. There is this element in which we can spread the good news, because in reality, when we think about, the symbols of Halloween and the death and the ghoul, that in some sense is an actual reality in which we live. We live in a world that is dead and dying, not only naturally, but spiritually. And our culture keeps going down that path of death, and we have the light. And so let's make use of this opportunity to give the light, give what the world needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, Eric, I heard your cat in the background. Was that a black cat? Just curious. Yeah.
That's Orion, my wife's cat.
Okay.
He's too old to take to the Chinese buffet
Huh.
to be processed, so we're just going to keep him around a little longer.
I just figured,
Wow.
black cats. It could have been a black cat, and it's just we're talking about this topic.
You're
and
gonna
it
lose
could
every
be-
viewer you ever had having me on this show. I'm just gonna let you know straight up.
No, the cat. It was fine. I could correlate it, like especially this time of year. If it was
Yeah.
a black cat, then there's something trying to prevent us.
Yeah, that would be a witch's familiar, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting when you think about being a good Reformed black coffee drinking Calvinist.
That's right.
A lot of times we can kind of get maybe too separated from things. I think, yes, there's all this stuff going on around, right? But from street ministry, Brother Ricky, that we go to where a lot of people don't want to go. We're armed around a man who's vomiting in the street, but we're sharing the gospel with him, and it's no different. But for me, I don't understand this idea of ceding a day to the enemy. All right, because the King of Kings owns every day. October 31st, November 1st, it doesn't matter. Our King owns it all. It's his day. Every day is his day, right? So, and every day is full of sinners, right? But also every day belongs to the Lord. So I don't give this ground to the enemy at all, despite what the world says. I think of Genesis 50:20. What did Joseph say to his brothers? You meant to do this evil to me, but God purposed it for good, right? Mm-hmm. They may mean the evil of all the world on Halloween night. I don't care because the Lord saves on every day because they're all his days. Yeah. So I don't go buy into all this stuff like, oh, don't participate, it's evil. I'm going to take that paganism and I'm just going to do what true Christians have done. I'm going to take the evil, expose it to the light. And when we're finished with it, we'll just mount it up like a buck on the wall. We defeated this too, right? Yeah. So that's how I view it.
Maybe we need to start a campaign to rename Halloween to Reformation Day and just start pumping out.
Try to stop us.
95 theses and.
Yeah.
I think there are some people who do Reformation Days, or they do. Yeah. We'll get into that when we talk about the fall festivals and stuff like that. But some people do things to kind of replace it, so to speak, while still participating in some manner. But a couple things when you think about trunk or treating, I think that as you mentioned earlier, Eric, about your kid dressing up as Spider-Man. I actually seen a meme, and my wife pointed it out to me as well. There was this meme because every time you come around this time of year, people are like, oh, it's evil, trick-or-treating and dressing up. And this person shared this meme and they were saying like, my child dressing up as Spider-Man 364 days of the year. It's okay. How cute, nice, funny. But on Halloween night, it's evil, it's pagan. Your child is dressing up and participating in darkness. And I say that to say we do have a poll over on the G220 Radio YouTube channel. And we are at 67% that says, no, I don't participate. It's evil. And the question is, do you hand out candy and maybe gospel tracts on Halloween night? And we do have 33% at yes, I hand out both candy and tracts.
We're starting to win them over, Ricky.
We're starting to win them. So,
or we're going to be called liberals, one of the two.
Yeah, I did see us lose people in the viewer, so people are dropping off. But this idea of trunk or treat, right? I do think that there are churches that do it very well, and then there are churches that don't do it as well. I've been a part of a couple that I've attended in the past. I don't usually go to as many because of my work schedule, but my wife will go and take our daughter to a trunk or treat. But some of them that I've gone to in the past, I was at one where the gospel presentation was horrid. I mean, it was so bad. And I was like, these kids have no idea what this guy was talking about. Not a clue, because his presentation was very, very poor. And that had a lot to do, I think, on the reflection of that individual. Maybe they weren't comfortable or familiar with giving the gospel. It was evident he did not know what he was talking about. And then I've had my wife tell me she's gone to some churches that you would think are sound or do preach the gospel, that are known to preach the gospel. And she said, you know, what's sad is like not one person that had a trunk that the kids were going to and handing out candy handed any gospel tracts out. There was nothing with that there. Now, maybe before they left, they would get a bag with the church information, inviting them to come to church, but nothing with the gospel on it. And I think if that is what we are doing, we're missing an opportunity. I would love to see every single trunk that's at a trunk or treat handing out candy with a gospel tract. I mean, I don't care if there's 100 cars there, giving them 100 gospel tracts at each station. That means those kids are getting it. You know what I mean? Those parents are getting it. But then also, if you don't give out tracts, but you give information for your church, make sure there's a gospel tract in it, because they may not come to church, but at least there's a gospel tract that they may read, and God may use that to, bring them to saving faith. Anything you guys want to add with that as well?
Nope.
Eric, I think you're on mute.
Hey, I'm not on mute anymore. So I think when we're talking in terms of gospel presentation, I used to be much more of a stickler. Now I want someone to, I tell some of our parishioners, no one's asking you to be R.C. Sproul. We're asking you to share the gospel, right? You may not be the best at doing it, but God, what's the old saying? God takes a crooked stick and strikes a straight lick, right? But you're right. If you're going to do it, Christian and believer, I would tell you, do it with the gospel intention, right? Mm-hmm. Do it with the intent of sharing the biblical gospel. Because again, you invite people to church. Okay. That's one thing, but man, give them the gospel, no matter what else you do. That's really what we're, I think, all saying here tonight. I don't think anybody says, hey, let's participate in a day where everybody's worshiping demons. This is the United States. Nobody's really worshiping demons. Even the people that dress up as a ghost or a goblin or a ghoul, they're not trying to worship the devil, right? It's not even about that. So again, I say, do not cede a day to the enemy when he doesn't need it. Do not give place to the devil. This is our time to show the gospel to people. And again, like you said, brother, they're coming to us. This is great, because normally, like you said earlier, Ricky, the witch is telling you, can't we get a day off? Can't you cut us a break? They're coming to you now. And some of the people there are going to be witches. I guarantee you, real witches may be coming to your door getting candy. Give them the gospel, right? Mm-hmm. Give them the gospel. Quit turning your light out and, telling people to pass on, because they're going to be there anyway. And if they're going to be there, we ought to be there with an open hand to give them. I'm not a liberal. I'm not saying hug them. I'm saying give them the gospel, right? Give them the gospel. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that you brought up earlier, Eric, and I think it's important that we do think about as Christians participating in Halloween, it's not in and of itself inherently evil to participate, wearing a Spider-Man costume or whatnot. But I do think as Christians, we need to consider and think about, if we have a trunk or treat, how we decorate our vehicle, how we let our children dress.
Amen. Right?
And so those are things we should consider. I've been to some that I was at one church that does it so very well, their trunk or treat. And it's not even out in cars. It's actually inside their building. It's a small little church. They have a very small parking lot. But they do it on the same night as Halloween. So all the kids are running around the neighborhood getting candy, and they stop in the church and they always go inside. They got bouncy houses in there, but every single one of their, not trunk or treat, but table and treat, so to speak, that's set up. They had some really good ones. Like I seen there was one that was like the fruit of the spirit, and they had all these fruit there and it said fruit of the spirit, and just wholesome things. Like even if it was a superhero, table, it was wholesome. It wasn't something dark and sinister or, something promoting zombies and death and ghouls and goblins.
Don't dress as the other team. That's what we told our people.
Yep.
So no Michael Servetus being lit on fire
No, actually, maybe. So, so and I mean, our school and a lot of our elders, we're a bunch of nerds, and we're going to have one of our areas is going to be decorated like if you've seen Lord of the Rings, you have the giant spider, um,
Mhm.
and then there's the light, and the light makes the spider cringe, right? Everybody's going to be mad at me because I'm not using names, but anyway, the name of the spider. But anyway, the point is Shelob. We're going to do Shelob's lair, but the point is we're making it a gospel presentation because the light defeats the darkness, right? And that's But everybody that does, my wife is doing her trunk is Ratatouille, and she's actually got a giant inflatable rat mouse. What is he? A mouse in Ratatouille?
Mhm.
She's got this giant inflatable costume, right? But the point is, every treat is a gospel track. And yeah, we just don't do the other team. If you show up dressed like the other team, we're not going to let you decorate your trunk. And then we're very, we fence the table on Sunday, and then we fence our trunk or treat on Halloween.
Yeah. So moving from that, the other thing that is done in communities, because time goes very quickly, so we'll try to run through this one because it's very similar. They just don't decorate trunks and do trunk or treat, but there's fall festivals, churches that'll have these fall festivals where they'll have maybe pumpkins on a table. They'll have like a petting zoo, some farm animals that you can come in and pet, and other things, maybe giving hot chocolate and apple cider and other like maybe hot dogs and some things to eat in a way to get people in, and maybe have some games like cornhole or other types of activities at an event where you bring people in, and they may give out some candy, they may give out some other kinds of treats and whatnot, and get people information about their church and the gospel. I think this is another way that churches can utilize this time of year to really reach out to the people in their neighborhoods.
Yeah, I think the trunk or treat idea has like kind of that night and going through where like fall festival allows the kind of to do similar things in the day. You have, opportunity for the kids. It's a lot more communal based in that way. Now, fall festival for me has something different because Southern always has it on the first Friday of September. And it's just a big gathering for those of us connected to Southern Seminary to come and enjoy the beginning of a new school year. But I think, you have that kind of atmosphere in which brings community. People can come, neighbors can see each other, get to know each other. I think it continues maybe differently than the trunk and treats, and a different way to show hospitality with the intention to bring the gospel, especially if your church is made up of people local to the area and close by, where they can engage their neighbors and be kind of show the light in a different way.
Yeah, and I think again, fall festival. I don't care what festival you have. I don't care if you're doing trunk or treat, fall fest. I don't church picnic. I don't care as long as as the goal is, if you're going to do outreach, to do it right and to make sure the gospel is front and center. Otherwise, you're giving out candy. Otherwise, you're almost wasting your time. I mean, to be honest, we I mean, yeah, you may want to grow your church numbers, I guess. I don't know. But the point is, if it's not gospel centered, I don't know why do it. My old growing up, we were very legalists. We were very much legalists. And we didn't do the Halloween thing. So what the church would do to make themselves feel better is have a fall festival, but have it on Halloween night. And you had to dress as a biblical character, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not doing it with the gospel in mind, I would ask, why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Well, you can't really call it an outreach if you're not reaching out with the gospel.
Yeah.
Because again, we all know here, and many of our listeners know as well, that the gospel is the power of God unto salvation.
Yes.
And how will they hear unless there is one to preach it, to proclaim it, to share it, to speak it, to hand it out in a gospel tract? How will they hear? And so it is important that whatever time of year it may be, anything that is a outreach needs to be centered around the gospel of Jesus Christ. Otherwise, really, like you said, it's wasting your time. It's not an outreach.
Yeah.
It's just an event in the community. And it doesn't, you may feed people's belly. You may give them a good time, but you're really not giving them something that is eternal that can save their soul. And that is either why we do it or we shouldn't do it at all. But those are just some things there. And then when we look to personal evangelism, and when it comes to this, Mike, you already kind of jumped ahead with that when speaking about handing out gospel tracts from our home, right? Mm-hmm. So if you happen to be in your neighborhood and you're able to hand out tracts, like you said, Eric, leave the light on, hand out gospel tracts with some candy. So there's ways to do that. And even with the quote unquote fall festivals, many of the activities that, as I was doing a little bit of research for this, just something that I would throw out, so you can hand out gospel tracts in your community to your neighbors with candy as they're coming by trick-or-treating. You can also kind of take some of those festival ideas and maybe set up in your yard. Some of the things I was researching and looking at is you could set up some hay barrels, whatever you call it. You guys, country boys, tell me.
Never make fun of West Virginia again. Ever again. Hay bales.
Hay bales. I'm not a country guy, but I did marry a country.
Hay bales in the barn.
I did marry a country girl, but but you could put these hay bales up, and you could have cornhole or some things or chairs, and have some hot cocoa or things in your as well, so that people can kind of come trick or treat, and others maybe can stop in your area and sit and play some games, maybe sit and talk, have a cup of coffee or some hot chocolate, whatever it is, and get to know your neighbors a little bit more as well. So there are ways you can do it. So guys, speaking about that from a personal aspect of trick or treating from your house with gospel tracts and candy and doing some of those activities, speak on that, and we'll kind of keep it moving.
Yeah, we've done the little gift bags with a gospel tract and candy. Now, my family, we're not going to actually be passing out candy this year. We're going to go with some friends to another part of the town, so we won't be home. But we always get the good candy. I realize this can be contentious, but give them the good candy with the good message. Come on, then there's a desire for them to come back because you have the good candy.
Have you seen the prices during inflation?
You know what? Sacrifices must be made for evangelism.
A Crunch Bar is a lot of money these days.
I understand. Yeah. And they'll come back next year.
You're lucky you get a half a Tootsie Roll. I'll just cut them in half.
But
you were saying.
Sorry.
No, it's all right, brother. We had another brother in Christ who would actually put a fire ring out in his driveway. He lived in a neighborhood, and they'd do s'mores and hot chocolate and gospel tracts. And that became that's a stop now in that neighborhood. If you're going to go to this neighborhood, you know which house to go to, because they're going to have every year. They have, s'mores, hot chocolate, but they also have the gospel. And that's why they do it. You can do that. You can transform your yard or your area into a place that is welcoming, and also a place where you can share the gospel with your neighbors as well. You can do it in several different ways. You're right. But even if you just sit on your porch with a light and a bucket of candy and some gospel tracts, or I've heard suggested take Paul Washer's Shocking Youth Message, put it on USBs, and give out those USBs to the neighborhood. Yeah. But anyway, that's do all things to the glory of God, folks. Yeah. Really.
And Larry is right here. Reese cups are really hard to give up.
That's true. I eat half of them before I give them out.
I'm not saying there's not temptations there, but
so what you're saying is you're going to give out full-size candy bars. So can you give us your address here on the air so
Not
we
on
know where
air,
to go?
no. Well, we're not going to be home this year, so
Oh,
you're not going to get it.
do
I
as
didn't say full
say.
size. I just said good candy.
Good candy. Okay.
Well,
Get the Hershey's packs.
Yeah.
Okay. I got you.
I think it's similar to when we as Christians go out to eat, right? And we leave a tip. Don't leave $1 million gospel track with no tip and say, here's your tip, the good news of Jesus, right? Because while that is more valuable than any amount of money that they may receive, you know, I think, and I've heard this said by a waitress once in the past, Sundays were days that they dreaded because a lot of Christians came in to eat and they leave terrible tips. And that's a reflection on you as not being a generous individual.
Yeah.
And I do know times are tough, times are hard. And if you're not able to afford something like that, it's understandable if you're still able to give out candy and get the gospel out. But if you are able, if God has blessed you in that way where you have the funds to, buy those, full-size candy bars or whatever it may be, to be generous with your neighbors. That is something that kids remember. They know which houses, right, Mike? They know which houses give out the good candy in their neighborhood, and they know the ones who give out the little pixie sticks.
So, yeah, I'm thinking that just, as a culture, there is a bad, Christians are looked bad because of some of these things. And not that I'm advocating that the culture should love Christians, but I think when people don't like us because we, don't tip or, do other things that just make us look like we're bad human beings in their eyes, we lose the opportunity to evangelize.
Yeah.
If we think about, I know we tend to harp on lifestyle evangelism and we've done shows, but I think there's an aspect in which how we act on Halloween, how we choose to interact with these non-believers make an impact. And when we're, joking aside with the good candy, but if we're being intentional to be ones that are friendly, opening up and making it where people want to come back, even though we do give out the gospel, even though they know they're going to probably get another gospel track, they still want to come back because of what it is that helps our witness. The early church was not just ones about preaching the gospel all the time, but it was living a life in accordance with it that brought the intrigue of these people are different. Why are they different? And, and I think, how we think about, most Reformed people, if they really hold to the law, doesn't go out on Sundays, but even like how we tip and how we think about our interactions with unbelievers is important for the gospel, because you may not have time then, but you may have time later. And that first meeting is going to understand. And like my wife and I have been developing friendships with non-believers through our gym and openly about our faith, and to do it. But those relationships are growing because of the honesty, because of telling them who we are, but just being quote unquote good people in the world standing. I think that the conduct is equal to the message.
And that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting at with don't turn out your light. If you live on a busy street and, trick or treat is happening, don't turn out your light, because you know what you look like? You look like just a sour, mean person. Now, when I was growing up, if you turned your light out, your house got toilet papered later. Like that was like, fine, don't give out candy. We'll pay you back for that. But, and it's like that in all things, brother. You're exactly right. No one's saying you have to be best friends with someone in order to share the gospel. And being best friends with someone is not sharing the gospel. But we also don't have to we say it out in the streets. Don't be a jerk. on the
Yeah.
box, just to be a jerk, right?
Right.
And we can do that with Halloween as well. We can be people of God, not dressed as a demon, right? But still share the gospel I think what is a wonderful opportunity.
Yeah. The one thing I do want to speak on, and you guys can add to this as well, is because you brought this up when you talked about growing up or being in a church that was very legalistic, right? I don't want to step on anybody's conscience. If your conscience, your convictions is, I don't want to participate in Halloween, then follow your conscience. Don't step over your convictions, right? But I do think we need to be careful because legalism can kill. Legalism can push your children away. And again, I'm not saying then that just means compromise everything. Please don't hear me saying that. But if you grow up, as I know my wife did, in a very legalistic kind of fundamental Baptist environment, and we are Baptist, but growing up in this environment, what tends to happen with a lot of those kids is as they start to grow up, they start to rebel against those things because everything was evil. Nothing was good. And then they start getting into the world and they start experiencing things and saying, oh, this isn't as bad. Now, it may be a bad thing, but they start seeing and saying, this isn't as bad as something over here. So therefore, they start participating and they walk away from the faith or whatnot. And so I want to make sure that I'm trying to be balanced and say, don't violate your convictions, but be careful not to fall into legalism in the aspect where you think every Christian that, participates in Halloween in some way by handing out gospel tracts or having a trunk or treat, they're somehow evil or wicked or have some evil intentions. You want to be, as Christians, we need to try to be as balanced as possible. It's biblical and balanced. So that we don't fall in one ditch or the other. We don't want to compromise and become very liberal and left on everything, or go and become legalistic. Go ahead and speak to those, you guys, and then we'll kind of wrap it up.
Seriously though, is handing out candy participating? Like, are you having a pagan ritual in your living room when you're handing out that Tootsie Roll? I mean, I think that's where we go. People, and I know everybody has backgrounds, right? So I carry some of my legalism with me to this day sometimes. And I have to actively fight against that. And I get that. But, if I could recommend a sermon to anybody that listening here would be R.C. Sproul, The Tyranny of the Weaker Brother. If you ever get a chance to listen to that sermon, he talks a lot about this type of stuff. But again, and as a good Reformed guy, I believe all days. And as I don't want to tell you my eschatology because then people really get mad. But I believe that from him and through him and to him are all things, Romans 11:36, including the days of the week, including what they want to call Halloween or whatever they want to call. Those are all the Lord's. And that's how I view it. Uh-oh, I got dinged out, huh? I heard a ding.
No, you're still here.
Yeah.
You're good.
Maybe I thought you were pulling the what is that?
Pulling the plug on you, like
Pulling that crook,
Yeah.
you know the old school on the stage when they get the shepherd's crook and pull you off the stage.
Yeah.
But anyway, you're right, brother. Don't violate your conscience. But by the same token, going around and telling, and you're going to get it for Christmas. We know Christmas time's coming. Jesus wasn't born in December. Then we'll get Easter is a pagan holiday. It happens every holiday. It really does. And sometimes it kind of angers me, but yeah, at the end of the day, it all belongs to the Lord, right? So just have that frame of mind.
Yeah, I think there's freedom there, to worship as you feel, or to partake in these things as you feel led. I mean, we think about the Reformation, and I know the Diet of Worms is not on the 31st, but it's an important part of the Reformation and tends to be talked about this. I mean, Luther's whole thing is show me in Scripture where I'm wrong, and my conscience is held by the Word. I think
Right.
For those who disagree with us, to really think about what does the Scripture allow in this case, because if we're not, we started thinking about divinity, necromancy, and pagan things. Like, are we actually engaging with that, or is it just the vestibules of what it was? And to think about it clearly, and I think even as us, I think it yearly when it comes up, it's an opportunity to rethink even our positions. Am I wrong? Should I need to reconsider this? Do I still believe the same as the scripture has God has sanctified me this past year? And I'm thinking, so in that doing so, not only do we leave legalism out because I'm trying to reform myself in my thinking about these, right? But I think it's helpful even for a broader conversation between these two different people who have opposing views, but yet can still worship the same God, as it's called. And, hopefully both groups are heading towards truth and into doing what is right and pleasing with the Lord.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. Before we wrap this up, there is one thing I want to give is some resources. You mentioned a sermon by Sproul, The Tyranny of the Weaker Brother. But Eric, why don't you go ahead and share with us some of the resources? I know you shared earlier some gospel tracts you made, and that's one way that people could get gospel tracts. They can make their own, and go through a printing company or whatever. But maybe share some other places where people can get some gospel tracts or some things that could be useful this time of year with passing out candy.
Yeah, so you can actually do your own tracks. It's not difficult at all. Vistaprint is what I did those on. They have you can design. It's very simple. It's very simple, and it's relatively inexpensive. I'll tell you who has some good tracks. That's Living Waters. Ray Comfort has some really good tracks for the Halloween season. He has one. It looks like it's an optical illusion. We had them last year, and the kids loved them. And they wanted to take that tract and show everybody, hey, look, which one of these is which paper is bigger than the other. So I would recommend if you're just going to get generic, or not generic, but just tracts, Living Waters is a good place. But if you do that, let me also say, I think we leave this out. Share the gospel and share your church information, right? So on my gospel tracts, now you can put a QR code on there. People can scan and see where the tract came from. It also gets them the ability to contact you personally and ask you questions about the gospel. But yeah, but Living Waters will be my go-to for mass tracts to hand out at an event like this. As far as trunks go, again, we just, we give people free reign, like you were talking about. Some people dress as biblical characters, whatever. But at the end of the day, I would just suggest don't let your people dress as the other team. But yeah, you can. And if anybody wants, I don't know if you have my contact information, brother, but you're more than welcome to post it up. I can walk people through the process of making a simple gospel tract. Very simple.
Yeah. Yeah. If anybody would like to know, they can contact us and we can connect them to you there, Eric. Well, that's been G220 Radio for tonight. I think this has been a good show, a fun show, just kind of chopping it up with brothers here about this topic of Halloween and how we as Christians can be a light in this dark night of the year. Our poll is still at 67%. No, I do not participate. It's evil. And 33%. Yes, I hand out both candy and tracts. And that poll will end once this show ends. But so you still got a few minutes to get over there and participate. But hopefully this has been edifying, encouraging, challenging, convicting for us as Christians, because regardless of whether it's Halloween or not, we are called, commanded to go and proclaim the gospel, to be a witness for Jesus Christ as ministers of reconciliation, seeking that the world would be reconciled with Christ. It is important for us to go stand and speak the gospel of Christ into this dying culture that is all around us, regardless of whether it's Halloween night or the other 364 nights of the year. And as we've already mentioned on this program, Christ owns it all. God is over all of the days. There's not one day that is more wicked or evil than any other days. God owns all of the days. He owns every hour of the day. He is Christ. He is King, and he is who we worship. And so go and worship the King. Kiss the Son, lest ye perish, as it says in Psalm 2. That's been G220 Radio for tonight. Again, Eric, thank you for coming on the program.
Anytime, brother.
God bless. And as always,
Stay Baptist.
Stay Baptist, stay bold. Truth and love, let the scriptures unfold. From creation to the end, we break it down. Real convos, Christ wears the crown. To say stay Baptist, stay bold. Truth and love, let the scriptures unfold. From the mic to the block, we keep it true. G220, we coming through. With Ricky and Mike, come and see real faith, real hope, real ministry. G220.